Everybody, this is Anna D. She is arguably one of my favorite people that I've worked with in tech. We've known each other for 8 years. Last week, the people of Galway, IT at Galway, honoured her for her outstanding contribution to the digital sector in Ireland. I know when I was in the IA, we also recognised you for your outstanding contribution as an IA member in that year, because it's kind of give with you. And normally when I see Anne, she's sitting here asking the questions and she's promoting someone else and telling them how great they are. And so it's really a privilege for me to sit here and say to Anna D, editor at large, tiny little thing, editor at large at Silicon Republic, and also very importantly, founder and entrepreneur. And I think we forget that sometimes when we think about the media, and we think that you're there forever. But you know, there are businesses that are set up too. So you're an entrepreneur in that, and most amazing and brilliant as well, founder of InspireFest, which does what it says on the tin, inspiring. So Anna D, thank you so much. You're very welcome to stage. Can we give her a round of applause, please?
Thank you.
So as I mentioned,
thank you for picking me up.
I'll tell you, well, you're great now, to be fair. And I have to say, Anya was up here earlier on and she was saying, you know, there's going to be a correction in the industry in terms of how we consume media. But I think without a doubt, even talking to Joe, who's only visiting from the US, he's a subscriber and reader of Silicon Republic and had lovely things to say. But obviously a lot has changed in the industry since you guys started out setting up Silicon Republic. Can I ask you to throw your mind back to the old days and just tell us a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur there?
Oh gosh, yeah, how long do you have? I suppose...
Well, about 15 minutes actually, so...
But I suppose the real start of, as an entrepreneur, I was a technology journalist by trade. You were talking about the media earlier. My entrepreneurial journey, I suppose it started with me and my co-founder. We were working in print, we were working freelance, and we were supplying sort of print journalism to the newspapers because they hadn't really got their technology journalism together yet. And then we decided, hang on a sec, our readers, they may be on dial-up modems and everything, but they're actually online. So right back in 2000, we were setting up Silicon Republic in my co-founder Darren's back kitchen. And then we went online in 2001 with our, I think, about 50,000 readers or something like that, which was big at the time.
How many have you got now?
Well, over 250,000 readers a month now. Yeah,
a month.
Yeah, and over 50% of them are overseas as well. So it's always lovely to meet our readers from the States. A lot of those readers are the US, and then otherwise other English language countries like the UK and India, funnily enough, and more and more in Asia now and around Europe.
So it's changed a lot.
It has changed a lot. I remember when we were designing the very first Silicon Republic site, we were really intent that it looked like a newspaper. That gives you an idea how much things have changed, you know. So it literally looked like the front page of a newspaper, and we used to call the home page the front page.
Wow.
So it just gives you an idea how even UX has changed. Exactly, yeah.
And that sense of creating something that people were familiar with, because you think, well, that'll make them use it more, rather than giving something completely different.
Yeah, and now the majority of our readers come in through other ways. They don't come in through the front page. They come in through because they follow us on various social media or on newsreaders or you name it.
But you are an entrepreneur, and I think, you know, there has been constant change throughout all that, whether it's through the user experience and design of the site, but also in terms of the kind of things that you guys do. So you've done incredibly successful conference series on different themes, but I think the most standout of the most recent is InspireFest. Do you want to tell us what inspired you to do that? And yeah, just start with that, and then I'll...
Well, as you probably know, you know, people are kind of probably tired of me banging on about it now. I've been doing it for so many years, but I've been kind of on a bit of a crusade about inclusion and diversity in technology and science, because starting off even as a journalist, I have been going to conferences all over the world in tech and science kind of all my working life. And I just got so fed up of being the only woman on stage or the only woman in the room, or, you know, it was so blatant. And as I got older, I realized it wasn't getting any better. And that really kind of freaked me out. So I suppose I've been on a bit of a crusade for quite a long time. And then we started off at Silicon Republic. We felt we had a responsibility as a news publisher anyway to be sort of portraying more amazing women and minorities in the publication. But then we started running things like the Female Founders Forum, which I think you were at back in 2013, and 100 top women in STEM, being science, technology, engineering, and maths. And we found that there were guys coming along to that and kind of going, it's a bit exclusive. So I suppose we started becoming a little bit more intersectional, where we were thinking, hang on a sec, we actually do want the guys in the room. I mean, half of our community are guys, probably more. And we also wanted to ensure that people, you know, of different ages, of different abilities and disabilities, people of LGBTQ community, ethnic background, racial background were also included. And that's really how InspireFest came about. And the big challenge for us was, so we didn't want to be dismissed as a kind of a diversity and inclusion conference. So it had to be better than anybody else's conference. So we had to, like, we spend a year sourcing our speakers every year, because about 70% of our speakers are women, and if they're not good and better than the guys, we'll be dismissed very quickly as a kind of a siloed off in a corner as a kind of a women's conference, because I've seen it happen to many people before.
And it's absolutely not. Like, I mean, I've obviously been many times, and it's not a women's conference, and it's not even just a technology conference. InspireFest, it's much more of a leadership conference, I think, in the round.
I mean, if you think about it, we use leadership quite loosely, but I mean, we need to be leaders even if we're intrapreneurs or entrepreneurs or you name it. We all need to be learning how to lead and how to be professional, and how to be successful, and how to measure our own success properly, and not assume that you have to be Mark Zuckerberg to be successful, for example. So sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
Well, no,
what was the original question?
Well, I suppose the question was just more in terms of, you know, obviously that was what the inspiration was behind InspireFest. I think, obviously, what you had a mission, you call it your crusade, and I think that's fair enough, because it's hard going, but what do you think has changed? I mean, I can see changes, but from your side, what has been your measure of success for that? And
well, I mean, the success of InspireFest has really, you know, been very cheering, because it was quite a leap in the dark. You know, we went out and hired the Bord Gáis Energy Theatre, which houses like 2,200 people at any one time, and is not cheap. And I mean, it actually came off, and we're doing our 4th year next year. So I kind of can't quite believe it, because I remember trying to sell it to sponsors, and they were kind of going, oh, it's a women's conference. And I was going, no, it's about diversity of thought, cognitive diversity, breaking down the silos between startups, entrepreneurs, industry, academia. So that diversity also, and also inclusion of different types of entrepreneurs, because I've always believed, I interviewed Gary Hamel, I don't know whether you know him, the management thinker, I suppose his best description, many, many moons ago, and it stuck with me, a quote from him where, I hope I get this right now, but he always said that innovation comes from that gap between resources and aspiration. And I loved that idea, and I just feel sometimes innovation gets forgotten or gets misunderstood a little bit. I mean, I think sometimes it's that diversity of thinking that really pulls it together, and I'm rambling now. So.
No, you're not. You're diversifying. It's not rambling. You're diversifying. It's perfectly fine. But I think it is. I think it is important to recognise what it has achieved, and I think in the context too of that risk and that entrepreneurial spirit and drive to achieve something. So first, I think we should give props to you guys for putting your money really where your mouth is, because I know someone who works for you guys, and you guys will not cover a conference now that does not have a minimum of 30% diversity, women speakers on a panel.
And none of us will speak on panels.
And you won't speak on one. So I did well inviting you here today and getting you to come. But I think that's a real commitment to a principle in terms of the values of that organisation, and being able to say, we won't cover it. And even sometimes when there are commercial relationships with advertisers and sponsors at stake.
We have turned away sponsors, you know, who didn't understand the philosophy behind it. I mean, there's no point. I mean, either we do what we believe in, or it's not going to work anyway, and people, you know, that magic around InspireFest won't be there. So, I mean, they were the right, and it's a really good time to mention as well, is that doesn't just come from me, obviously, that comes from my co-founder, Darren, and my incredible team. I mean, they're so on board with it. You know, they're also willing to make the sacrifices, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
you know,
absolutely.
they'll take the risk as well.
And they're the ones who probably are in the front line of saying no to people, you know, where they're trying to cultivate a relationship, and that's not always easy, but I suppose that's what leadership is, isn't it?
Yes,
and as an entrepreneur, you know, there are some of the risks and challenges that you have to face to stay true to your product. Somebody asked me last week what was my worst day ever in my old job. And I said it was the day my colleague Ailva left me. That was possibly your best day, seeing as she now works for you. But
it wasn't directly afterwards.
It wasn't directly. She didn't poach her from me. There's honour amongst thieves. But can I ask you, what drives you forward? What is best day for you as an entrepreneur? What has been best day, or what is that unicorn day that you're looking for?
Yeah, and I was trying to think that, because you mentioned this to me earlier today, and I was trying to think about it on my way out in the car, actually. I was thinking the worst day, I suppose if I were entirely honest, was kind of at the height of the recession, and publishing is not an easy place to be in a recession, and a very large client had just pulled a deal that was long signed and delivered, but like we weren't going to take them to court, you know what I mean? In fact, they ended up being a client again when things picked up. So it completely dropped us in it. So I remember standing, it was New Year's Eve, I won't tell you what year, give too much away, and I was standing with my co-founder, Darren, down at the harbour, and there were fireworks going off, and I knew that the next day we might not have a business. You know, we had just paid the salaries, but the tax man was knocking on the door, the debtors were knocking on the door, and I remember just standing there and the fireworks going off, and the two of us looking at each other going, are we completely mad? Like, why do we put ourselves through this? But everything came right, and everything came right a couple of days later. So that is one thing I would say to entrepreneurs. On your worst days, you know, generally there is light at the end of the tunnel, but sometimes it doesn't feel like it. Is that good enough for my worst day?
That's bleak.
It's pretty awful, isn't it?
I actually am holding my stomach now because I feel a little bit nauseous, because I know that pain, and it is, you know, not to the same extent, but it is gut wrenching when you're faced to that. And
that's years ago, so you know.
Yeah, and you come back, and there's that resolve to show up the next day, to head for that unicorn beautiful day. What is that best day?
God, I've had tons of great days, and I was trying to pick out the very best, again, just the last half hour before I came out. But, you know, coming back to InspireFest, I think that back in 2015, after the end of the very first day, and we went down to Merrion Square because we were having a fringe event down in Merrion Square. You were probably there as well. The community is not that big in Ireland. And we were all sitting around eating and listening to music, and after a very, very long day. And I remember just seeing that we had actually managed to pull a tribe together and a community together that were really, really committed to changing the industry. And, you know, a bit like we were talking about earlier, but kind of almost changing the world, you know, it's changing our part of the world. And it had been such a success, and it had been such a risk that, yeah, I'd say that'd be way up there. I think I was genuinely incredibly happy.
And incredibly proud, I can imagine.
Oh yeah, hugely.
Yeah, and you're allowed to feel that. That's a really good thing, to feel really proud of it.
We should learn to pat ourselves on the back, because entrepreneurs aren't always great at doing it. Yeah.
Can I just on that, and I'm going to wrap it up shortly, really, but you know, you've referenced your co-founder quite a few times. I know Darren, obviously, as well. And you have a pretty solid team in there. They're very much a family. I guess you must experience a great pride in them, and they in you, to be part of that organisation. What's that been like, obviously, you know, cultivating that kind of culture within an organisation in a tough industry?
Yeah, it is a tough industry, but I've always believed all my life in, you know, no matter how tough it gets, in being kind. I mean, you know, it's almost as simple as that, is to never be unkind. And it's actually a really, really good place to start, because no matter how much you're annoyed with somebody, if you keep that as almost as your motto, then you can explain to them to what extent they have messed up, or to what extent they have put you in the doghouse or whatever. But you're doing it in a constructive way, and in a way that they know it's not personal.
Yeah.
And they know that you would never do anything to actually hurt or harm them. I mean, that might sound incredibly simple, but I know people who've worked in places and it's the very opposite. And I think that's a recipe for disaster. And we have a very good retention rate in the company, because I think we all work together, and we're very honest with each other as well. Like, they will hold me accountable, as much as I hold them accountable. I actually think that's very important too. Like I'll come in some mornings and go, oh my God, Aislinn's going to kill me. I never got, you know, A done or B done. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, it's a very flat, I suppose, culture and structure.
It is flat. I mean, we are we're still the boss, myself and Darren, I suppose, and people know that, but it can still be relatively flat. You know?
In terms of that camaraderie. I have to say, I'm just really glad that your worst day was not the day I rang you and told you I broke John Kennedy's hand.
No, that was about number 10.
So I have to say, I'm going to wrap on this ridiculous story, but Anne was on her way to I was at a conference, and you were meant to be at a breakfast briefing, and you couldn't make it because you had slipped on ice and totally broken your elbow. So that was terrible news for Silicon Republic because their editor-at-large was decommissioned. And being a journalist and someone who uses their computer a lot during the day, hand is helpful.
Right hand too, yeah.
So John Kennedy, who many of you know is the editor in the Silicon Republic as well, he decided to take up running with me. And we were running down the quays one night. It was dark, it was slippy, and John fell and broke his hand. So he had broken his left hand and you had broken your right shoulder, and Darren, your co-founder, and I said, I broke John. I'm really, really sorry. He's in the hospital. So there was two of you decommissioned at the same time. I'm just glad that wasn't your worst day and that I was not responsible for it, because you have been responsible for so many of my great days. So thank you very much, Anne, for joining this afternoon, because I know you're mega busy because you're planning Inspirefest for next June already. So thanks a million for joining us, for being an inspiration as always. And you've got a board meeting to get to. Go!
Thank you.